Welcome to What is Going On for new thought from the edge of Om. Each week on OMTimes' flagship radio show, veteran broadcaster, author, and media consultant Sandie Sedgbeer conducts thought-provoking interviews with inspirational authors, artists, musicians, scientists, speakers, and filmmakers who are working at the point where spirituality and science meet consciousness at the very edge of Om. Here is your host, Sandie Sedgbeer.
Hello. What would you say if I told you there's an electrical cure for cancer that was developed by a chairman of the Nobel Assembly of Medicine that's been used by more than 2,300 Chinese doctors to treat more than 13,000 tumor patients with more than 75% success? And that there's an African herb that's been shown in multiple studies to eliminate the need for a heart bypass in 90% of scheduled surgeries. And that there are many more proven alternative therapies and technologies that have been sidelined, sunk, or discredited by the medical system. Would you wonder how it is that a system predicated on a vow to do no harm can overrule your right to choose for yourself? Stephen Ross, Ph.D, is co-founder and CEO of the non-profit World Research Foundation, which houses a 15,000-volume library with books dating to 1492. For over 45 years, he's researched, lectured, and made presentations to government agencies and hospital networks around the world on many subjects pertaining to health. The author of the book, And Nothing Happened, But You Can Make It Happen, Stephen Ross joins me today to discuss how and why some of the most important therapies and techniques discovered over the past 50 years that were proven to be safer and more effective than those in current use have been deliberately ignored by the medical system. Dr. Stephen Ross, welcome.
Thank you, Sandie.
Wow. Well, you've been gathering information pertaining to health since 1969. Let's kick off by having you tell us what prompted your interest in this arena.
Thank you. Well, I was on athletic scholarship at my university in Southern California. I ran 100 meters, 200 meters, and during our Easter break, I was working out by myself, as we often did during break time, and a gardener had left the sprinkler head on our workout track, and I did not see it until my left leg was coming down. And when I realized I was going to step on this at full speed, I tried to extend my stride and ended up really tearing my knee up. Crawled on my hands and knees that day to the trainer's room. I was sent to the sports physician for the Los Angeles Rams, the Dodgers, in that year, who said I had to have surgery or I couldn't compete again. I was sent for a second opinion to the University UCLA. Also, I had to have surgery. Well, I was very dejected, Sandie. I returned to my trainer's room, and there was a Popular Mechanics magazine, has nothing to do with medicine, sitting next to a whirlpool. So I opened it up and talked about a technique that was in Russia. Well, I called these health experts, and asked, would it work for me? And they said, oh, that's holistic garbage. It's phony. It would never work. And I asked these experts, well, what do you know about it? And they said, we don't know anything. But this is America, and if we don't have it, nobody has it. Well, I decided to try it on my own. I missed 4 weeks of training, and that year I placed 5th in the United States for my track and field events. And I wondered, why did these experts say something wouldn't work when they didn't know anything about it? And what starts as an interest, I started going around the world investigating what techniques we may not be told about for every disease and illness I could identify.
And you certainly identified an awful lot of them, didn't you?
Yes, we have a very big library, and I think what it goes on is most practitioners are trained in whatever their specialty is, and there is so much within that specialty, they really don't always have the time. I'm going to be kind here. They don't always have the time to explore what else is out there, but it is a very, very big world, and there are many, many approaches to techniques that people think they don't have options.
Well, yeah. Having been involved in the natural health arena for many, many years, I too know a fraction of the stories that you know. But I mean, one of them that many, many people know is the story of Royal Reif, who is the inventor of the most powerful light source microscope in the world, which is 10 times more powerful than those used today. And that was developed in 1920. Just very quickly, tell us a little bit about the story of Royal Reif, because, if ever there was a great injustice, and there have been many of them, but this was a great one.
Yes. Royal Reif actually was a chauffeur for a man named Timkins who built ball bearings for carriages back in the 20s. And his chauffeur Reif said he had an idea that he could build microscopes better than the companies into microscopy. And Timkins was literally a multimillionaire, and he set up a laboratory. Royal Reif ended up developing a light source microscope that was 10 times more powerful, not only with the light source microscopes then, but even a light source microscope now. And to make it clear to your listeners, people have heard of electron microscopes, which are very powerful, but the specimen is put in a vacuum bombarded by electrons, and you cannot watch anything live. Well, a light source microscope does not harm the specimen, and so researchers can watch what is going on with specimens. And even today, they just don't have the technology of really high power, but they are watching viruses and bacteria live. So Royal Reif develops a super microscope, and in the process of doing it, he came up with a system where whenever he would view any germ or virus or bacteria, it would glow in its own unique color. Now, color is a rate of vibration. So when he looked at typhus or he looked at cancer virus would glow in a ruby red color in a specimen. So he and the other doctors said, well, why don't we use laws of resonance? Now, people have seen an example when a singer sings, he or she can hit a note and break glass. And so Royal Reif and his doctors who worked with him thought, wait a minute, what if we get the same frequency as this ruby red, beam it just like a singer's voice to a glass, and let's see what happens. And what happened was they found the frequency for 60 diseases and illnesses that when they hit the right frequency, the virus or germ or bacteria was devitalized or destroyed. Now, Reif had working with him E.C. Rosenau of the Mayo Clinic, Arthur Kendall of Northwestern, Llewellyn Barker of Johns Hopkins. So these were not doctors who worked in a little garage. These were the who's who of doctors in the 20s and 30s that found frequencies for 60 diseases and illnesses and proved that it worked on human beings very quickly and efficiently. So that, in a nutshell, is Royal Reif. And I might add this, nobody knows where that powerful microscope would happen to it, but I had it personally in my possession for 2 years, along with all of their lab notes, 500 letters of all of these doctors back and forth. So I am speaking of something I know of and not something that I just read about.
But you don't know where it went when it left your hands?
I do, actually.
It's not, do, but it's not worth telling us.
I make sure that everybody understands, Sandie, that I don't have it physically in my possession. So therefore, I can sleep at night and I feel very comfortable. But no, I am fully aware of where it is. Nobody on the internet or nobody else really knows where it is. But again, having direct access to it and most of Reif's original information. Now, people today hear of Reif devices. We are not talking about Reif devices. We are talking about the original Reif materials from the 20s and 30s that we have in our possession.
So are you saying that some of the, or all of the products being sold now that are being touted as Reif machines or like Reif machines are useless?
No, what I'm saying is Royal Reif died in the 1970s, and therefore all these machines from the 90s, 2000 could not have possibly been developed by Royal Reif, and he was using a different system than what they are currently using. He used old radio tubes. He ran his frequency through special gases. All of these Reif-like devices use frequencies that were not developed by Royal Reif because they are using electrical circuits, and people are using his name to validate what they're doing. I'm kind of a purist, Sandie, and that is why I'm saying if he died in the 70s, he did not build or have anything to do with any of these machines. Now, do some of them work? Electromagnetic frequencies work. By the way, the reason why this did not get into mainstream medicine is it would have taken us out of pharmaceuticals and chemicals and brought us into physics. So if somebody was saying, well, if this was so good, why isn't it in use? That's the reason. Frequency could cost 10 cents out of an electrical outlet. So there was really no money in it for the medical profession.
Sure. I just want to add an addendum to the Reif story because in this incredible library of yours, which I've had the privilege of being in and being awestruck by, you have lots of materials, including a photograph of Royal Reif at a dinner with a number of well-known doctors, all of whom absolutely raved about this machine. And then within a couple of years, pretty much all of whom denied ever being there.
Yes, people can find the picture on the internet, the dinner party of 1931. We have the original photograph of that. And also within, as you mentioned, Sandie, several years, all of the doctors attending, and it was more than 30, all but 4 said they didn't remember a dinner party, they never met Reif, they didn't know of a cancer cure, but we have the guest books of everybody who visited Reif and his laboratory and saw the microscope, and guess what? These doctors who claimed that they never knew anything about it, their names are in the guest books. So I don't always go into conspiracies. I know the reason why, because of the letters we have. A lot of these doctors were threatened and told that they would lose their standing medically if they pursued electromagnetics. So they stopped. And I'm not their judge, Sandie, because it's always easy to judge somebody else. They made a call. They didn't want to go there. And remember, in their day, there was no internet. So a lot of this was very quiet. Today, if something happens, my God, 50 million people know about it within 10 minutes. But back then, there was really no internet.
Yeah. Well, your book, And Nothing Happened, is full of stories like this. There are far too many for us to go into, but I just wanted to quickly mention one that just makes your hair stand on end. Dr. Bjorn Nordestrom, who is a past chairman of the Nobel Assembly of Medicine, whose electrical cure for cancer with no adverse effects was completely ignored. Now, this is a man who had so many papers published, had been involved with the Nobel Assembly many times in various different degrees, and had pioneered percutaneous needle biopsy, which is a diagnostic technique used now, and yet they wouldn't pay attention to his electrical cure. So tell us a little bit about that cure before we have to go to the break.
Yes, and I'll do it quickly here. I had the opportunity. I actually flew Bjorn Nordenstrom out to Los Angeles to speak at our World Conference. And my direct speaking with him, he told me that, again, the needle biopsy, it was accepted, but when he got into electromagnetics and shrinking cancer with electricity, it caused a firestorm. And the reason it was a firestorm, he said, was the doctors were telling him they didn't have time to learn anything new. This was physics and electricity. They weren't trained in it. And therefore, even though he was the chairman of the Nobel Assembly, nobody would give him the time of day. So he went to publish his results, and the publishing company said, there won't be enough people buying this, so therefore we are not going to print it. So he self-publishes his own book, and then all of the other medical doctors said, oh, it's self-published, therefore there's no validity, and they didn't accept it. It was his catch-22. But his success. Now, when he came to Los Angeles, the Los Angeles Times said, alternative medical practitioner Bjorn Nordenstrom. That is how they labeled him. That is the little game that was played. The chairman of the Nobel Assembly is not an alternative practitioner. So he was a striking man. I spent 2 weeks with him and heard the story. And when he gave his patent to China, it was so successful, he won the highest award a non-Chinese resident could win in medicine.
Yes, and that was the thing that I mentioned at the beginning of the show. Thousands,
and by the way,
thousands.
2,300 doctors worked with 13,000 tumor patients. Yeah. And had an effective rate of 75%.
Yeah. Tell that to someone who's got cancer.
Absolutely.
Wow, unbelievable. You're listening to What Is Going On. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer, and my guest today is Stephen A. Ross, Ph.D., co-founder and CEO of the non-profit World Research Foundation, which houses a 15,000-volume library with books dating to 1492. And we're talking about his book, And Nothing Happened, but you can make it happen, which reveals some shocking details that we're discussing today. When we return, more of those incredible technologies that have disappeared.
The future of internet radio is here. OMTimes Radio, IOM FM.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free. AscendingHearts.com.
More than 24 million Americans have an autoimmune disorder, and that number continues to grow. I'm Sharon Saylor, and I'm one of those 24 million. To put that number in perspective, cancer affects about 9 million and heart disease up to 22 million. That's why I've brought together top experts and those thriving regardless of their diagnosis to bring you the latest, most up-to-date information. Join me, Sharon Saylor, Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, for the Autoimmune Hour on Life Interrupted Radio to find out how to live your life uninterrupted.
Hello, I'm Sandie Sedgbeer, host of OMTimes' flagship radio show, What Is Going On. As a long-time editor, book judge, spiritual magazine publisher and radio host, I've read thousands of books and interviewed hundreds of authors and teachers, so I know what's worth reading and what isn't. Now, with the spiritual book market growing increasingly crowded, More and more people are seeking my help in finding the authentic voices, the empowering tools, and the genuine skip the BS guidance that will make the most difference to their spiritual development. So I decided to make it easier by bringing my knowledge, experience, and considerable network of contacts together in the No BS Spiritual Book Club. There are no ads, no joining fees, no obligations, and no BS. Just an ever-growing library compiled by recognisable and respected names of the 10 best books that helped them the most on their journeys. Plus free book excerpts, audios, and live video interviews where you can quiz them about their spiritual journeys and their 10 best list choices. Your time and money are valuable, your spiritual journey even more so. If you're looking for genuine guidance from people who have walked this path before you, check out Sedgbeer.com. Click on the No BS Spiritual Book Club tab and join the club. That's Sedgbeer.com, SEDGBEER.com. I'll see you there.
A social distancing tip.
Putting distance between yourself and others is critical to slowing the spread of coronavirus. So here are ways to stay in contact without the physical contact part. Call, send a text, set up a video conference, post on social media, dedicate a song on the radio. If you have symptoms of fever, dry cough, and shortness of breath, call your healthcare provider before going to their office. For more info, visit coronavirus.gov.
Let's all do our part because we're all #alone together. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Welcome back. Dr. Stephen Ross, you founded the World Research Foundation in 1984. What made you decide to do that?
Sandie, can I ask a favor of you? May I speak just one more minute on Bjorn Nordstrom, because I feel that it would be very important for people to understand that when Bjorn Nordstrom came out to our conference, the news program 2020, which was very big in the United States in 1986, actually interviewed Nordstrom and aired it on their program in October of 1988. In that interview, they asked doctors at the Mayo Clinic and Harvard what did they think about what Nordstrom was doing, and they said, "We don't have time to learn anything new." That was what they said on air. But also, when Nordstrom signed his book, and I put it in the library here, when we filed it, and by the way, Discover magazine said Nordstrom has made the biomedical discovery of the century. When we put his book on the shelf, sitting next to it was a little book called The Application of Electricity as a Therapeutic Agent, and it was written in 1877. 1877. In that book, a doctor shrank breast cancer tumors with electricity 100 years before Nordstrom did it. Wow. And I wanted to put this in to say, you know, sometimes we keep reinventing the wheel and discoveries have been made and we bypass. I decided to form World Research because I am a very lucky man. Can you imagine that there was a magazine sitting next to a whirlpool in my trainer's room, and I happened to read about a technique that helped me rectify my knee? Well, not everybody is going to be so fortunate. And I, along with my co-founder, whose name is Laverne Bachman, decided why not have a location where people could come and find out what exists all over the world from ancient times to the present, and from hardline medicine to wives' tales. And they could get it all in one place. And so we have information packets on 350 diseases and illnesses, some of them 500 pages thick. Every 4 or 5 pages is from a book. So it'd be the equivalent if you read 100 books on your topic on a particular health difficulty. So I wanted to make it easier for people to get good information.
you said you're a very lucky man sitting next to that magazine. Synchronicity has played a really big role in your life, and so have dreams, haven't they? How far does that go? I mean, were you having dreams, and beyond this particular experience of finding that mechanical magazine, did you have an awareness of synchronicity in your life prior to that?
No, it's interesting you would say that because, as I mentioned, I had the experience with finding this book, and that was 1969. But in 1973, I met a Native American Indian who told me all my future guidance would come in dreams. And Sandie, I remember laughing because A, I didn't remember many dreams, and B, they always seemed rather silly or kind of strange. But 1 week after I met this man, I had a dream, and I recalled it, and I followed through with that dream. And then, as a result of what happened, I ended up having 6 dreams a night for the next 3 months on every phase of my personality, my likes, my viewpoint on things. And then I began getting telephone numbers, just telephone numbers. And when I would wake up, because I would write them down, I would call, and people would say, "We're waiting for you. We have collections, we have devices." And I'm so glad that you have been here, because if people just heard this on the radio and you hadn't been here, they'd go, I wonder what this guy's talking about. But yes, because of dreams that started, I have been guided all over the world and found overlooked or forgotten health techniques, devices, ancient philosophies. So dreams have been very important and led me to writing my second book, which I called A Grand Design of Dreams, because I wanted to empower people that, oh my gosh, we all have this direct source to higher guidance.
Yeah. I remember a story that you told me about Manly Hall, who you met in LA, and having a dream one night, long after he, I think after he'd passed, and you had a phone number, and you called the number, and somebody said they have something for you, but they wanted to know, you to prove that you were the right Stephen Ross. Tell us about that.
Yeah, there's actually 2 things that you have together there, but one of them with Manly Hall, I visited his magnificent library and research center with the rarest materials on earth, and I had a dream. He built his Philosophical Research Society in 1932. My dream was how he wanted to build it in 1927, but he didn't have enough money. And when I gave it to his head librarian who gave it to him, he called me to his home and he said, "Who are you? How could you know this?" And I just smiled, and he said, "What do you want?" And I said, "I want to go into your personal vault and I want to Xerox alchemical books," which he allowed me. I was the only one at that time. And so I copied manuscripts, unpublished documents, alchemical books, which are sitting in our library, because of this dream that he knew. I was born in 1949, so I couldn't have known what he wanted to do in 1926. So it was a calling card. Yes. It was the spiritual calling card. But the one I like even more is the second thing you mentioned, and that is I met a woman named Betty Lee Morales for 30 minutes in LA. She was holding a presentation book of another super microscope called a nemoscope, which it actually was 50 times more powerful than even the Reif microscope, but it had disappeared. And 10 years after I met her, I get a call from somebody who goes, "Is this Stephen Ross, Dr. Stephen Ross?" I said, "Yes." "Can you prove it?" I said, "Well, I've got a driver's license." "No, can you prove that you are World Research Foundation, Stephen Ross, and you were in LA?" And when I eventually did, he said, "I have a box from my deceased client, and I do not know what's in it, but I am going to ship it to you." And when I got it, it was the rarest of the rarest pictures of atoms, which nobody has pictures of right now, but this microscope could do it. Pictures of the cancer virus, really phenomenal.
Wow. I mean, things come to you in the most interesting ways. You're not a multimillionaire. You don't have agents around the world scouring, libraries and collections for these books. You've got a book in your library, which I held, dating to 1492. It's probably the only copy in the world. What is bringing these books to you? Who is bringing these books to you?
Well, Sandie, I have been a firm believer. I have a math science background, a Ph.D., sports, but when these dreams started and information coming through, my love for the spiritual world, the guidance beyond that we all have, the love of the angelic kingdom, I have just done everything in my power to keep things at their highest and best. The library is always the information available to all people. I have never charged people to use the library. I have done healing work and consulting for 47 years. I have never charged. I like to think that, why are they coming? I am a caretaker. I view myself as a caretaker. I treat everything in here with love and respect, whether a book sold 3 copies or millions, whether somebody is famous or not, doesn't make any difference. To me, we're a preserver and a caretaker. No, we're not millionaires. We try to keep this library afloat so that all people will have access when they want to see original documents. So I just always say I'm a lucky guy. I live a magical life. I've had adventures after adventures all over the world, which I know are a lot of them divinely orchestrated. Yes, I have a will and I go out, but Sandie, you know yourself, things happen sometimes that are way beyond our mind, our will, and what we thought was going to happen. It's divinely orchestrated.
Yeah, well, I think it has to be. I'm curious. You've gathered a prodigious knowledge about health and healing. You've achieved a considerable reputation. You've been in demand on radio, TV. You've presented lectures to science and medical academies throughout the world. You've been an expert witness in trials. You've spoken to members of the UK Parliament. I mean, you've talked to hospitals and, research centres. You've talked to physicians. What do they have to say in response to what you tell them about and nothing happened?
I believe that it all comes down to you've got to talk to people in a parlance that they can relate to. And when I get to the very medical-oriented scientific type, they want to hear more of the science. I'll give you a good example. There is something called chromotherapy or color therapy, the use of the visible light spectrum. And we have information on many techniques, but the greatest technique by didnt. At one time, there were 500 U.S. doctors using his color therapy in the 20s before the AMA said, nope, any doctor using color is going to lose their license because everybody knows color can't possibly work. Well, when I am making presentations to a group of doctors, I will have always some doctor in the audience will say, that color's nonsense. And I go, doctor, what do you do for Billy Rubin, yellow jaundice, infant liver syndrome? Well, we they'll never finish. What he's going to say is they put them under a blue light.
Yeah.
And if they don't, it's 100% fatality. But if they put the child under the blue light, it neutralizes the yellow jaundice in there, and the baby lives. And then I'll look and I'll go, I don't know what you call that, doctor, but that's color therapy. And so imagine that individuals have worked out systems for 300 diseases and illnesses using color, which is frequency, which is vibration. And we are vibrational beings. We are electromagnetic. So that is more acceptable. Now, when I'm with the new thought groups, they don't need to know the science. They are looking for things that work. So the acceptances come because I can produce thousands of documents where researchers were experimenting with magnets, electricity, but it never gets known in the medical circles. It languishes in their journals as if some doctors are afraid to look at it. And there's so much documentation about, again, magnetism, electricity, frequency, radio waves, cancer. Here's Bjorn Nordstrom shrinking breast cancer tumors using electricity. So I have never really met any resistance because we have too much documentation here. Yeah. There's just too many studies and information behind us all in one place. If we were out, and I've assisted groups sometimes, I read in the newspaper that somebody in some town is doing a court case against a polluting company, and they're saying it's dangerous. But what we do is we send them thousands of studies. We just send it to them. So the next time they appear, all of a sudden, they have more information behind them.
That's wonderful. Thank you for doing that. You're listening to What Is Going On. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer, and I'm speaking with lecturer, speaker, author, and co-founder and CEO of the non-profit World Research Foundation, Stephen A. Ross, Ph.D. And we're talking about his book, And Nothing Happened, But You Can Change That. We'll be back with more from Stephen Ross after the break.
The cutting edge of conscious radio, OMTimes Radio, IOM FM. Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network.
Hello, I'm Lisa Berry. Join me every Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time for Light on Living, a chance to see new, hear different, and feel more as I shine the spotlight on all the ways to lighten the load of life's challenges. Light on Living is your link to that new way you're looking for, that new understanding that will enhance your life, and that positive connection that will support your growth. So join me and you'll gain insight and start to see things in a new way that motivates you.
I'm Fidel Mshombo. I was born in a city called the Bukavu in the Congo. We were a loving family, and then, boom, everything that I had disappeared in a single day. People think that when you are a refugee and they resettle you to America and all your problems are done. They don't understand that that's the beginning of everything. I was not born a refugee. I was made one.
It's time we welcome refugee families with open arms. Learn more at embracerefugees.org, brought to you by the Ad Council.
Welcome back. Dr. Stephen Ross, as I said earlier, there are many, many case histories in your book, And Nothing Happened. We can't go into all of them, but there is one that I would like you, one more that I'd like you to talk about, and that is the Castoff Cell. This is of such importance to women. I cannot believe that nobody is taking this up.
I'm sorry, which one?
The Castoff Cell, the presentation in 1954. Yeah.
Yes, the Castoff Cell, that is kind of an amazing story because the individual, the medical doctor who found this, Dr. Gerard, I happened to be glancing through something called Science News. And this Dr. Gerard made a presentation to the Chicago Gynecological Society that from a single cell cast off in a woman's vaginal tract, he could measure the electrical potential and he could determine whether a woman not only had cancer, Sandie, but where it was located in the body. And he tested over 35 women. And in each of those women, if it said they did not have cancer, it was 100% correct. And in 20 women who it indicated had cancer, 18 actually had it. And it's interesting because Dr. Gerard has 500 scientific papers and 9 books in neurobiology. He's long passed away now, but he was a prestigious writer. But for some strange reason, he published this one study that he did with electricity and working with the Castoff cells. I have really done everything in my power looking to contact his family, the universities. The university where they're holding his materials says, well, all his information is in boxes. But can you imagine, here is a test, yes, which is seriously non-invasive. It is not putting a woman at higher risk as a result of doing the test, but with a 94% accuracy test if it's there and 100% if it's not. And by the way, I did not give the year. That was in 1954. So nobody has picked that up. Probably, again, there was no internet at the time. I do have it in my book, but I wouldn't exactly say I have such tremendous sales that a lot of people are seeing it. But it certainly would have been something that should have been pursued. But again, Sandie, here we have the electromagnetic spectrum. He was measuring voltage on a cell, and he couldn't have had that sophisticated equipment that we would have now, again, because it was 1954. But another one of those techniques that we bypassed.
Well, I mean, it's beyond comprehension, isn't it? It's beyond comprehension that an organisation set up to protect our health is doing anything but, and is allowing, and it can only be the power of the pharmaceutical companies, the enormous power they have, and the vested interests. But what I just don't understand why the medical profession, who, after all, let's face it, take a vow to do no harm, why they aren't protesting against this.
Well, people have asked me, I've been in the health field, I've done healing work. People ask me why I didn't become a doctor. And along with the obvious, how much schooling obviously is involved there, it has to do with regulations and what you can do and what you can't do, because some group decides that, as an example, color shouldn't be used, we're going to take away your license. Or can you imagine the sheer power that you can take the chairman of the Nobel Assembly, the discoverer of needle biopsy, and turn him into an alternative medical practitioner? I had to convince him to do an interview because before he came to LA, the LA Times wrote alternative practitioner. Then they wanted to interview him. And I said, publicity is good. Let's really watch what they have to say because they were just told, you give them an interview. He didn't even want to do the interview because people just throw names on things and they don't do it. No, people have asked me how I don't go crazy with all we have here and knowing that they're not in use.
Yeah.
And I just have to go with, this is how it is right now. But the people who do find us, we provide information and people have to make choices. And right now, I have to say, with the beauty of the internet, the downside is, what do you believe, Sandie? There is so much, eggs are good, eggs are not good. Cholesterol is good, cholesterol is not good. Coffee enemas are good, coffee enemas are not. It's outlandish how much is on there, which is why I still like our book form. Part of me sometimes wonders, is it passe, are libraries dead because people don't go to libraries anymore? They want to Google, but you know what? You don't know what you're getting on there.
No.
You don't know.
No, and honestly, people have to be discerning. I mean, their life and their health, their well-being, their spirit and their soul even is far too important not to be. And having stood in your library and wanting to plant myself there for the rest of my life, I can't imagine, that someone wouldn't want to see what you have and just see it for themselves. My goodness. You can't get
funny,
a better convincer.
The funniest comment I always get in here is after I give a little tour, people go, do you have cots so I can sleep in here? And I go, no, but we also have a very beautiful room, as you know, a specially built room patterned after rooms built during the Renaissance era. I played music 24 hours a day for the first 7 years after the room was built, just to set the intent.
Yeah.
But I look at the lives some of these authors took 40 years to compile and write, and I just am in awe. There's still such great information that exists, and if people pursue, if people really look, you can find things. But I think sometimes people give up too early. They accept, okay, you have to have surgery. Okay, you have to do this. No, you do not. Maybe you end up doing it. I would never tell people not to, but I would tell people, be informed. Check out your options. And I've used this example. If a fly lands on a table, I can use one of those wrecking balls that knock buildings down. I'm going to get the fly, but I'm going to destroy the table. Or I can use a baseball bat. Maybe I'll get the fly and I'll damage the table. Or I can use a fly swatter. Sometimes in medicine, they start you off with the wrecking ball. Get your breast removed. Do this. Why not start, if you can, with the less intrusive and then work your way up?
Absolutely. Stephen, your book is called, very aptly, And Nothing Happened. But you can make it happen. How can we make it happen?
Sandie, because of people like you. How do we make it happen? By knowledge, by understanding. And now I am going to say something that I feel is important. And people have to take it how they're going to take it. And that is, we have over here the group that runs for the cure of cancer, walks for the cure of cancer, raise all this money, wear your pink ribbon. I contacted that group and I said, do you put research money into electricity, magnetism, anything other than pharmaceuticals? No. So what are you collecting money for pharmaceutical research? I'm saying this because it is about empowering ourselves. It was Emerson who said, when I find narrow viewpoints, I find narrow reading. And so how do we make it happen? By being aware that there may be other things that exist here. And when you hear somebody say, oh, that person's a hack, that person's alternative, that person is no good, they have no credentials, take one step further and decide for yourself and follow your heart and your intuition. Does this make sense? I remember a person telling me that their grandmother was given all kinds of pills to take for a health problem. And she took the first round one day. She became ill, so she flushed them down the toilet. And 3 weeks later, she returned to the doctor. And the doctor said, oh, my God, this is wonderful. It all worked. You're cured. She goes, I flushed the pills down the toilet. You didn't ask me one of the fundamental questions of everything in the library. What do I think would be the best or the most important? And my answer would be our willpower, our intent, our mind. It is more powerful than every technique in my library. Yeah. What we can accomplish when we have desire, and as one of the old alchemists said, imagination, faith, and will. When we imagine what we want to happen, when we know that we are above anything, and we stick to it, we can accomplish incredible things in health and in life. The biggest, strongest, best thing we have is our own innate abilities, Sandie.
Absolutely. I mean, in your book, you talk about spiritual healing by P.P. Quimby, who cured 25,000 people just by speaking with them. Yeah.
He argued them out of their diseases and illnesses because he had developed an ability within himself that he said others could, where when he was in the presence of somebody, he picked up exactly their physical health problem. He picked it up where he could feel it, and he would give it back to them saying, is this what you're feeling? Yes. And then he'd say, do you remember when you first had it? You had it because you sneezed twice and somebody said, oh, you must have whooping cough. Or you were sitting in the pew of the church and the lecture was about if you think like this, you're going to have a physical problem. Our thoughts bring us into conditions. And it was P.P. Quimby who said, thoughts are like the aroma of a rose. You don't see the aroma, but it's there. And thoughts are things. And thoughts of ourselves and others permeate matter. And this was the philosophy of P.P. Quimby.
Yeah, and many others who have proven that, thought is more powerful than anything. Stephen, we're out of time now, unfortunately. Thank you for allowing me to visit your library. Thank you for the book, which is absolutely fascinating. And would you tell our audience, I'm sure lots of people will want to come see the library, where can they find you? How can they reach you?
Well, they can reach me at this email, sross, R-O-S-S, at wrf.org. And they can mail us at P.O. Box 20756, Sedona, Arizona, 86341. Our main library telephone number is 928-284-3300. And Sandie, here's what I'm going to tell you. You did make something happen. You had this show, and unlike my book title, And Nothing Happened, Sandie made something happen.
Thank you for that. I'm very pleased to have made something happen, and I hope more happens because of it. Stephen Ross, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And nothing happened, but you can make it happen. You can get the book on Amazon. You can buy it from stephenf.org, and you can make something happen. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer. Thanks for being with me today. I'll be back at the same time next week. Until then, it's goodbye from me.